Hello everyone, welcome back to our English in the News series. I'm thrilled to see you here again and I hope you've been practicing and improving your English skills. In our last English in the News lesson, we discussed the Fukushima wastewater release. If you haven't seen it yet, don't worry, you can catch up by clicking the link below or here and grabbing the free PDF we provided. Now, let's dive into our new lesson, which is just as important. Today we'll be talking about an issue that affects many retail workers. It's a topic that brings up some interesting native English phrases, collocations, and news comprehension. So let's get started with the headline for today. And as always, don't forget to download the free PDF we've prepared for this lesson. It'll be a great resource to reinforce what you've learned.
Tesco staff offered body cameras over crime fears. Tesco is taking a proactive stance in ensuring the safety of its staff by providing them with body cameras. This measure comes in response to a concerning surge in violent incidents, which have risen by a staggering 1/3 since the previous year. These distressing statistics are in line with a report released by the British Retail Consortium, BRC, earlier this year, indicating a nearly twofold increase in abuse directed towards retail employees compared to pre-pandemic times. Tesco's CEO, Ken Murphy, emphasized the urgency for stricter legislation targeting offenders in an op-ed for the Mail on Sunday. While progress has been made to categorize attacks on shop workers as an aggravating factor in convictions, Murphy advocates for a distinct offense for abuse or violence towards retail workers. He points to Scotland, where the Protection of Workers Bill already deems it unlawful to assault, threaten, or abuse retail staff, and urges England and Wales to adopt similar measures. Additionally, Murphy is pushing for the supermarket to have the right to be kept informed about the progress of cases. He expressed his conviction that crime is a scourge on society, and an insult to shoppers and retail workers. It is time we put an end to it. Policing Minister Chris Philp echoed Murphy's sentiments, emphasizing a zero-tolerance approach to such criminal behavior, regardless of the monetary value of the stolen goods. According to the BRC's crime survey released in March, there were over 850 daily incidents reported in 2021-22, a significant escalation from the pre-pandemic figure of 450 daily incidents in 2019-20. These incidents encompassed instances of racial and sexual abuse, inflicting considerable emotional and physical distress on the victims. The BRC, representing over 200 retailers in the UK, disclosed that the cost of retail crime amounted to £1.76 billion in 2021-22. This included £953 million lost to customer theft and £715 million allocated for prevention. Helen Dickinson, the chief executive of the BRC, lamented how the pandemic has normalized alarmingly high levels of violent and abusive behavior against retail workers. Co-op, a major food retailer, also sounded the alarm in July, warning that certain communities could become no-go areas for the company due to the escalating crime rates, which surged by over 1/3 in the past year.
So let's talk about the title. Tesco staff offered body cameras over crime fears. This title uses a sentence structure that is common in other headlines. Grammatically, there should be a linking verb somewhere here between staff and offered. Perhaps you're thinking it should be Tesco staff are offered body cameras. But in headlines, articles like or the, conjunctions, and sometimes linking verbs like is or are often dropped to create a more concise and attention-grabbing headline. Take note also that the title uses a passive construction. So when we say the Tesco staff are offered body cameras over crime fears, it means that the Tesco staff are the ones receiving the body cameras. The sentence doesn't specify who is offering the body cameras, but we understand it's someone outside of the Tesco staff. Tesco, by the way, is the most well-known British multinational grocery and merchandise retailers. Let's go ahead and read our first sentence. Tesco is taking proactive stance in ensuring the safety of its staff by providing them with body cameras. Proactive stance might sound a bit tricky, but it's actually quite simple. It means Tesco is taking action ahead of time to keep their workers safe. To understand the word proactive, imagine putting on a helmet before you ride a bike. That's being proactive. A proactive person or business expects a certain behavior to happen, so he or it acts in advance of this future situation rather than simply responding to that situation when it has already happened. In organizations, the term proactive stance means to solve problems and make changes as soon as people become aware of them. And if you're wondering what's the opposite of this, it's actually reactive. Okay, and then we have that phrase body cameras. So these are like small cameras that people wear on their bodies or clothing. They record what happens around them, which can be really helpful for making sure everyone stays safe. They are also called body cams. Let's continue reading. This measure comes in response to a concerning surge in violent incidents, which have risen by a staggering 1/3 since the previous year. A concerning surge. Concerning means something a bit worrying. Here, it's worrying about a sudden increase in problems like fights or arguments. So Tesco is worried because there have been more of these incidents since 2022. Violent incidents. Violent incidents are situations where people act aggressively or use force. It's when things get physical and rough, probably by pushing, grabbing, throwing objects, attacking with knives, or any other weapon. Tesco has seen more of these and they want to stop it from happening. A staggering 1/3. When we say staggering, something is very shocking or surprising. Staggering 1/3, it means a very big increase that no one expected, like going up around 33%, 1/3 than before. So imagine if you had 3 cookies and suddenly you had 4. That's a 1/3 increase. Let's continue reading. These distressing statistics are in line with a report released by the British Retail Consortium, or BRC, earlier this year, indicating a nearly twofold increase in abuse directed towards retail employees compared to pre-pandemic times. Distressing statistics means numbers or figures that make us feel sad or worried. In this case, what's upsetting is the increase in bad behavior towards workers. It's not good news at all. In line with. When we say in line with, it means matching or agreeing with something else. Here, Tesco's experience matches with the British Retail Consortium, BRC, found in their report. A consortium is like an association, in this case, UK retailers. Now, when something is not in line with another, we say that it is inconsistent or dissimilar. A nearly twofold increase. Twofold increase is saying something has doubled or almost doubled or become twice as much. Imagine if you had two apples and suddenly you had four, that's a twofold increase. Retail employees. These are the workers who help in stores, like the people at the cash registers or stocking shelves. So Tesco wants to make sure they are safe while they're at work. So, what do we understand so far? It's Tesco is taking action because they've already found that there are problems with how their staff are treated by some rude customers. So, they're proposing to equip their workers with body cams because the numbers or figures of customers abusing their retail staff is increasing. And actually, it says here in a report, it has doubled or become twice as much compared to pre-pandemic times. Let's continue to our next paragraph. So it reads here, Tesco CEO Ken Murphy emphasized the urgency for stricter legislation targeting offenders in an op-ed for the Mail on Sunday. Urgency means the need to do something quickly because it's really something important. Imagine if you saw fire, you'd feel a sense of urgency to call for help. For stricter legislation means making rules even tougher. It's like when parents might make their rules stricter when they want you to be safer because you're their child. In our story, it's clear that there are existing rules now about people causing trouble in retail shops. However, they're not followed exactly. Targeting offenders means focusing on people who are causing trouble. Mr. Murphy emphasized that laws should give special attention to the people who are causing the trouble. An op-ed here is a special type of article where someone shares their opinion on a topic. It's like when you write a letter to a newspaper to say what you think about something. So here, the CEO wrote his opinion and had it published in an online newspaper called Mail. All right, let's continue reading here. While the progress has been made to categorize attacks on shop workers as an aggravating factors in convictions, Murphy advocates for a distinct offense for abuse or violence towards retail workers. When we categorize, it means putting things into groups based on their similarities. Imagine you have a big box of colorful crayons. If you want to keep them organized, what might you do? You might group them together based on their colors, right? So that's exactly what categorizing is. Aggravating factors in convictions. An aggravating factor in convictions is something that makes a punishment even more serious. Imagine two people, let's say Alex and Jordan, got into an argument. Alex was really angry and unfortunately ended up pushing Jordan, causing them to fall and get hurt. Now, when the judge looks at his case, they consider a few things. If they found out that Alex was already in trouble for fighting before, that's an aggravating factor. It means this isn't the first time Alex has been in a fight. This makes the judge take the situation more seriously because it shows a pattern of behavior. So, in this case, the fact that Alex had a history of getting into fights becomes an aggravating factor in the conviction. It's an additional piece of information that makes the punishment more serious. It's like saying this isn't just a one-time mistake. There's a pattern of behavior here. So far, we know that the first part of this whole sentence says that steps have been taken to recognize attacks on shop workers as a more serious aspect when deciding the punishment for the person who did the attacking. So let's continue. Again, it says here Murphy advocates for a distinct offense for abuse or violence toward the retail workers. To advocate for a distinct offense means to support the idea of making a new rule or a new law. Here they're talking about making a specific law about being mean or violent to store workers. So altogether, it's saying that even though they've made some progress in taking attacks on shop workers seriously, Mr. Murphy believes there should be an even stronger rule for when people are mean or violent towards workers in stores. It also says here he points to Scotland, where the Protection of Workers Bill already deems it unlawful to assault, threaten, or abuse retail staff, and urges England and Wales to adopt similar measures. To deem means to consider. So the phrase deems it unlawful means certain actions are considered to be against the law. It's like a teacher saying a certain behavior in class is not allowed. So, what do they consider unlawful? Assault is when someone physically hurts or threatens another person. It's a serious word for a serious action. To threaten is when a customer angrily tells a retail worker that they will harm them if they don't get what they want, or saying things like, I'll make sure you regret this, or you better do what I say, or else. Abuse, on the other hand, can take several forms, like yelling, screaming, or using offensive language towards a retail worker. To adopt similar measures. To adopt similar measure means to take similar actions or steps. It's like when different schools might all decide to use the same new safety rules. They're adopting similar measures, like a policy or a practice. In this context, it means that England and Wales should implement or use similar measures to what Scotland has in place. Adopt means, by the way, to take up or start using something like a policy or a practice. In this context, it means that England and Wales should implement or use similar measures to what Scotland has in place. This should not be confused with another word, adapt, ADAPT, which means to modify something to suit your requirements. Anyway, altogether, he's saying that in Scotland there's a rule that protects store workers, and he wants England and Wales to have a similar rule to keep workers safe too. Let's continue to our next paragraph. So it says here, additionally, Murphy is pushing for the supermarket to have the right to be kept informed about the progress of cases. Is pushing for. Pushing for means trying very hard to make something happen or to get something you believe to be very important. Some can do it by talking to people, gathering signatures, or even making presentations. Let's check out more examples for this. Parents in the community are pushing for improved safety measures around the school. Environmental activists have been pushing for stricter regulations on industrial emissions. All right, so some examples to use pushing for. Going back, to have the right to be kept informed. This means you should be allowed to receive updates or information about something because it affects you or it is important to you. You should be told this information because it concerns your safety and well-being. So far we know that Murphy believes the supermarket should be allowed to know how legal cases involving their employees are developing. This way they can stay updated on what's happening. He expressed his conviction that a crime is a scourge on society and an insult to shoppers and retail workers. It is time we put an end to it. Expressed his conviction. Expressed conviction means he shared his strong belief or opinion in a clear and direct way. A scourge on the society, on the other hand, is a way of saying something that is a big, serious problem for a community or a group of people. It's like a big, harmful issue that affects a lot of people. Let's have a look at more examples of scourge in sentences. For centuries, diseases like cholera and typhoid were a scourge on communities, causing widespread suffering and loss of lives. You can also say, in recent years, the scourge of cyberbullying has become a major concern for parents, educators, and policy makers. So, putting it all together, this part of the article means Murphy strongly believes and wants to make it clear that crime is a big problem for everyone in the community. He thinks it's disrespectful to both shoppers and the workers in the stores. He's saying it's time to stop. Let's continue. Policing Minister Chris Philp echoed Murphy's sentiments and emphasizing a zero tolerance approach to such criminal behavior, regardless of the monetary value of the stolen goods. Echoed sentiments. Echoed Murphy's sentiments means Chris Philp shared the same feelings or belief that Murphy expressed. A zero tolerance approach. A zero tolerance approach means that they won't tolerate or accept any level of a certain behavior. It's like saying no excuses, it's just not allowed. For example, a school might have a zero tolerance approach to bullying, meaning no form of bullying is acceptable, no matter how small. Regardless of the monetary value. Regardless of the monetary value means it doesn't matter how much money something is worth. They're saying that even if the stolen things aren't very expensive, it's still not okay to steal them. So let's say someone steals from a store, like a toy. Even though it's not very expensive, it's still wrong. They shouldn't take it, regardless of its low value. So what does this part mean? The policing minister, Chris Philp, agrees with what Murphy said. He's stressing that they won't accept any bad behavior, no matter how much money is involved. Let's move on to our next paragraph. According to the BRC crime survey released in March, there were over 850 daily incidents reported in 2021-2022, a significant escalation from the pre-pandemic figure of 450 daily incidents in 2019 and 2020. Significant escalation, it's very important, it's a huge increase or rise. It's like when something goes up a lot and becomes much bigger or more intense. So let's say your allowance went from $5 a week to $20 a week. That would be a significant escalation. So in this story, a figure of 450 daily incidents going up to 850 is a significant increase. By the way, instead of that phrase, a figure of, you can also say a number of, or maybe an amount of, or a total of, a quantity of, a count of, or even a sum of. Okay, so these are some phrases that you can use in place of in figure of. Anyway, let's continue. These incidents encompass instances of racial and sexual abuse, inflicting considerable emotional and physical distress on the victims. Encompass incidences means that the incident included or covered cases of racial and sexual abuse. And then we have this word, inflicting. It means causing or making something happen, often something negative or painful. It's like when someone makes another person feel hurt or sad. So, for example, if someone says mean things to you, they are inflicting emotional pain. The word inflicting can also be used in several collocations. Like you can say, um, inflicting pain, also damage, harm, injuries, punishment, or even emotional distress. Okay, which we have over here, emotional and physical distress. Emotional and physical distress means feeling very upset, both inside your heart, emotional, and in your body, physical. It's like feeling really, really sad and maybe even hurt. So example, imagine, someone said really mean things to you that can cause emotional distress, and then also pushed you, that is physical distress. That would be a very tough situation. So what does this paragraph mean? The BRC, or the British Retail Consortium, conducted a survey about crimes. In 2021 and 22, they found that there were more than 850 bad incidents every day. This is a big increase from the time before the pandemic when there were only about 450 incidents each day. These incidents included cases of being mean or hurting others based on race or gender, causing a lot of sadness and pain for the people who were hurt. Okay, let's continue. It says here the BRC, representing over 200 retailers in the UK, disclosed that the cost of retail crime amounted to £1.6 billion in 2021 and 2022. Disclose means to share or reveal information, like telling a secret. It's like when you tell someone something important that they didn't know before. Example, you found a hidden treasure and then told your friends about it. You disclosed the secret or where it was hidden. Another phrase here is cost of retail crime. What's that? Simply, it refers to how much money was spent or lost because of bad things happening in stores. This can include stolen items, damage, or money spent on preventing these things. So, for example, if a store had a £100 stolen and had to spend £50 on new locks and security, the total cost of the retail crime would be £150. Continue reading. This included £950 million lost to customer theft and $715 million allocated for prevention. Loss to customer theft means the amount of money that was taken by customers without paying for things. This is like when someone takes something from a store without giving any money in return. Allocated for prevention. Here, the phrase means that a certain money or resources have been set aside or designed for a specific purpose or use. For example, we can say money allocated for education, for marketing, for storage, or for research. Now, allocated for prevention means setting aside money specifically for stopping bad things from happening. It's like saying when going to use this money, or we're going to use this money to make sure bad things don't happen in our store. So, just to give an example, if a store puts aside money to hire security guards or install security cameras, that money is allocated for prevention. It's used to make sure the store stays safe. So altogether, this paragraph says that the BRC, which is like a big group representing more than 200 stores in the UK, shared that all the bad things that happen in stores cost a lot of money. In the year 2021-2022, it added up to $1.6 billion or pounds, I should say. This includes almost 953 million pounds from things that customer took without paying, which is not okay, and 715 million pounds set aside for stopping these bad things from happening. Okay, let's continue. I think this is our last paragraph, and it says here, Helen Dickinson, chief executive of the BRC, lamented how the pandemic has normalized high levels of violent and abusive behavior against retail workers. Lamented, what does that mean? It means she expressed her deep sadness or regret about something. It's like when you're really upset about a situation and you talk about it to let others know how you feel. Example, if you had a favorite toy that broke, you might say, I'm so sad about my toy. I really loved it. And that would be lamenting. Normalized. Normalized means something became so common that people started to think it's okay, even if it's not. Is like when something bad happens a lot and people start to get used to it. So, as an example, imagine if it rained every day for a month. After a while, you might start to think that's just how the weather is, even though it's not normal. That's normalizing. So, what has become commonplace? It's the alarmingly high levels of violent and abusive behavior. Something considered alarmingly high when it is so much above what is expected or considered safe that it causes serious concern or fear. For example, if the number of accidents on a road suddenly increases by a large amount, it would be considered alarmingly high because it's much more than what is considered safe for that area. All right, moving on. Co-op, a major food retailer, also sounded the alarm in July, warning that certain communities could become a no-go areas for the company due to the escalating crime rates, which surged by over a third in the past year. Okay, so co-op sounded the alarm. Sounded the alarm here doesn't really mean like they rang the bell, the physical bell. It means they warned or alerted others about a serious problem. It's like when a fire alarm goes off to tell everyone there's a fire. For example, if you see someone about to cross the road without looking, you might shout, "Watch out!" You're sounding the alarm to keep them safe. No-go areas. No-go areas are simply places where it's not safe or not a good idea to go. It's like saying you should stay away from there because it's not safe. So, as an example, imagine there was a part of your neighborhood where some wild animals were living. Your parents might say, that's a no-go area for you. So in this story, to be labeled a no-go area is bad. People may be afraid to visit these areas. leading to a sharp drop in customer traffic. So for the supermarket or grocery, it may be hard to attract and retain employees. In extreme cases, businesses may be forced to close their doors if the situation becomes too dangerous or if they are unable to sustain operations. All right, let's have another phase here. Escalating crime rates. Escalating crime rates means that the amount of bad things happening, like stealing or hurting others, is getting worse and worse. As an example, if in 1 month there were 10 cases of people being mean and the next month there were 20, then you can say that would be escalating crime rates. And finally, we have surge over or surge by over a third. Okay, this reflects what was mentioned in the earlier paragraph. Surge by over a third means it increased by more than 30%. It's like when something grows a lot by more than 30% over a short period of time. It went up by 30%. So, what do we understand from this paragraph? Well, Helen Dickinson, who is like the boss of BRC, a big group of stores, expressed her sadness about how the pandemic made it seem like it's okay to be really mean and violent to people who work in stores. Another big store, Co-op, also raised a serious concern in July. They said that in some places it might become too dangerous for them to do business because the crime is getting much worse. In just 1 year, the amount of bad behavior increased by more than 30%.
Now, before we wrap up, I'd like to leave you with a thought-provoking question. How do you feel about the violent crimes escalating everywhere? It's a concern that affects us all, and it's important to think about how we can make a positive impact. Tell me about what you think. Thank you for joining us today. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone you think might benefit from it. Keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next lesson.